Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. Give me 1 second. I may have to leave and restart again because I can't present at the moment. Give me 1 second. I will leave and rejoin. That seems to have sorted itself out. Thank you very much. I hope you can all hear me. So welcome to this afternoon's webinar for Agriculture, Environment and Animal Care. My name is Anne Rogers and I'll be presenting the slideshow this afternoon. There we are. So hopefully you can all see the slides on the screen there. And I will make a start now. So the purpose of today's webinar is to cover the structure and assessment of the Common Core Pathways and Employer Set project of the Agriculture, Land Management and Production T-level. So that is the core programme of the T-level. If you do have any questions, please put them in the Q&A function and I will answer them individually, either at the end of the webinar or via email. And I may also add them to the FAQ page on the website if I think that's appropriate. Please note that we are recording the webinar and it will be available as a recording and as downloadable slides on our website very shortly. And if you do have any feedback that you want to provide on either on today's webinar or on the content or assessment strategies of the core programme, we may share that feedback with the Institute, Ofqual and the department as evidence of your views and input. So please do put any questions that you have into the Q&A function and I'll have a look at them at the end of the webinar. Thank you. Just as a brief reminder of the structure of the T-level, I'm sure most of you will be familiar with this by now, but just as a brief reminder before we get onto the main part of the webinar. The T-level structure is, as you can see on that slide, the core programme is there in the very dark blue. The core consists of the Common Core and in terms of the land-based T-levels, a core pathway as well, and the Employer Set project. And that core programme altogether consists of approximately 30% of the total TQ time. Those elements are externally set and externally marked, and the entire core programme is given a grade of A* to E. The other components of the T-level are the occupational specialism, which in terms of the TQ time is around about 70% in the land-based T-levels. That is assessed via a synoptic assignment covering practical and applied and written knowledge, and that is graded at pass, merit or distinction. That is marked by the centres and moderated externally by us. The T-level also includes the industry placement, a minimum of 45 days at industry relevant work placement. Maths and English, learners are expected to be working towards attaining a grade 4 at GCSE or equivalent if they haven't already achieved that. And the tutorial, employability, enrichment and pastoral time. But I'm going to concentrate on the core programme this afternoon, which is the Common Core, the Core Pathway and the Employer Set project. In terms of the Common Core, all learners on the land-based T-level, so that's everyone, including agriculture, land management and production learners, and the animal care and management learners, when that part of the qualification is launched, will take the same content and the same assessment for the Common Core. So this content is common to all land-based students across all sectors. It is quite generic. It is contextualized as much as possible towards the land-based sector, but because it's taken by every learner across all sectors, it can't be biased towards any one particular specialism. So it is quite general and generic. But the Common Core contains elements of health and safety, sustainability, working within the sector, ethics, business, equality, communication, relationship management, finance, and information and data. So all learners will take elements of that, and it is possible, if it's appropriate in your centre, to combine learners across different specialisms within the Common Core teaching, if you think that would be appropriate. They will all take the same content and all take the same exam. A lot of this content may be quite new to land-based centres and land-based learners in terms of being assessed specifically on this content. And resources will be available towards the Common Core teaching and learning and curriculum planning, both from ourselves at City and Guilds and from the ETF. So resources will be available to assist you with the Common Core teaching and learning programme. In terms of assessment, the Common Core is assessed via an externally set and externally marked exam. It will be a 2-hour paper worth 80 marks, and it's a typical exam paper made up of different question types, including short answers, more structured answers, and some extended response questions. The level of difficulty increases throughout the paper, with the lower demand questions at the start and higher demand questions as you go through towards the end of the question paper. But it's quite straightforward, a single exam paper that takes 2 hours. Now, the core pathway is a little more complex. If you've seen my previous webinars, you will know that because of the diverse nature of the agriculture, land management and production sector and the land portfolio in general, the core pathway content has been more contextualised towards those various occupational specialisms to engage the learners more within the core programme and to make sure that they are learning the correct content towards the specialism that they are registered towards. All core pathways have the following common topics, and the topic headings are common, but the content within those 4 headings is contextualised to the specific occupational specialism. So all the core pathways contain elements of health and safety, sustainability, biosecurity and supply chain. But as I say, they're not all exactly the same, they are contextualised. And then each core pathway has additional content, which is specific to their particular occupational specialisms. And I'll just take you through the table so that you understand what's going on here. Learners on the occupational specialisms of crop production, trees and woodland management and horticulture share a core pathway. They take the same core pathway content and the same core pathway exam. And the additional content on that core pathway includes content on plant growth and development, because it's common to those 3 occupational specialisms. Learners on the land-based engineering specialism have their own core pathway content, which includes operating principles of these systems and components, and maintenance, repair and handover of land-based equipment and machinery. Livestock production learners have, again, their own core pathway content, which is mostly geared towards animal physiology, health, nutrition, etc. And floristry students also have their own core pathway content, which includes some plant biology and additional business content. So you can see that these core pathways are, again, contextualized to the occupational specialisms. And because this is the core component, this is all knowledge-based. There is no practical element to any of the core. This is all written knowledge and assessed via written assessments. The core pathway content is assessed again via an externally set and externally marked exam. And exactly the same as the Common Core, it is a 2-hour paper worth 80 marks. It has equal weighting as the Common Core. And in exactly the same way as the Common Core paper, it's an exam made up of different types of questions, including shorter answers, longer answers, extended response questions, and the level of demand increases as the learner goes through the paper. The employer set project, again, is externally set and externally marked. It samples knowledge drawn from across the core pathway content. So the employer set project is based on the contextualized information in the core pathway content rather than the common core content. And it's based on a specific project. The learner is given a scenario within their controlled assessment window. And then they are given various tasks to complete related to that scenario. And it assesses the knowledge learned as part of the core pathway element of the T-level. These projects are developed together with employers in the industry to reflect realistic scenarios, activities and challenges that the learner may well come across as part of their working life once they qualify. But each learner within the particular core pathway takes the same employer set project. These are not set individually by individual employers in their work placement. They all take the same project, the same assessment. Yes.
Sorry, it's Sarah. Can I just interrupt you? There was just a question. Is it possible for you to just minimise the pane, the pane with all the options and the sound on the side? Because it's just.
I didn't realise that was still there. I'm so sorry. How do I minimise it? There we go. That's as small as I can make it without actually leaving. I'm sorry about that. I didn't realise it was visible to you all. I'm so sorry.
No, it's gone now. That's fine. It was just going over a couple of the ends of the sentences. That's all.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for that. And apologies. I didn't realise that was visible. Okay, so the employer set project consists of a project scenario, a brief that the learners are given, and they are then given a number of tasks to complete within controlled assessment conditions. And the first task is always a research task related to that scenario. So they don't see the scenario until they come to their controlled assessment window. And they each have the same amount of time to research elements of that scenario to then inform the following tasks, which will include elements of design, planning, peer review and evaluation. And the project is linked to the core skills of analysing, communicating, critical thinking, decision making, investigating and working in a team, as well as literacy, numeracy and IT. And it's really important that these core skills are incorporated into the teaching and learning of the core pathway so that the learner is properly prepared for being examined on these core skills during the ESP assessment. All the core components are set against a series of assessment objectives, and these are common to all T-levels, not just the land-based T-levels, and they are designed to allow judgment of the learner to be made across a number of different categories of performance, and they are, as you can see on the table there. Assessment Objective 1, A and B are about demonstrating knowledge and understanding of the content. Assessment Objective 2, apply knowledge and understanding to different situations and contexts. So it shows that you can use the knowledge and understanding that you've demonstrated and apply it to a novel situation. And Assessment Objective 3 is about analysis and evaluation of the information and issues within the scenarios and questions that the learners are given. The assessment schedule for learners, in terms of the core component, the core exams, the common core and core pathway exams, typically will be undertaken in the summer term of year 1. And the current proposal is that there will be a retake window in the following autumn term. It's the same for the employer set project, typically undertaken in the summer term of year 1, and then retake if necessary in the following autumn term. The first time the learners attempt this assessment, they must take all 3 components in the same assessment window. That's the common core exam, the core pathway exam, and the employer set project. They must all be undertaken within the same assessment window for their first attempt. For subsequent attempts and resits, they may take the components separately. They may resit one component or more than one component, but the first time they sit them, they have to sit all 3. There will be exam series, as I've said, in summer and autumn, and you could put your learners in for their first exam series in the autumn term rather than the summer. It's entirely up to yourselves. They will get a resit opportunity whenever you decide to put them in for their core programme exams. And just for your information, for the occupational specialism, I will be covering this in more detail in my next webinar. But for the occupational specialism for agricultural land management and production, we recommend that delivery of this content should start really from day 1 in year 1, due to the guided learning hours, the size of the content. Plus, the occupational specialism contains the practical skills that the learners want to engage with. And assessment for the occupational specialism will typically be in the final third of their second year. The weightings of these components in the qualification, as I said at the beginning, the core component, so that is the common core, core pathway and employer set project, is roughly 30% of the content of the technical qualification as a whole. And the occupational specialism is the other 70%. And in terms of the components of the core, the exams are worth 60% of the grade, and the 2 exams are equally weighted. So the common core exam and the core pathway exam are each worth 30% of the final grade, 60% in total. And the employer set project is worth 40% of the final grade. And as I said, the core component is graded at A* to E. So that's the information on the core content and assessments. Just a quick overview of the support available to you. As you may know, we are undertaking a 12-month programme of support for centres that want to start delivery of the ALMP T-level in September 2023. We had a series of introductory network events around the country, and there will be further networks and centre visits across the region and across the country in 2023, leading up to September as well. Do sign up for our quarterly T-level e-bulletin if you haven't done so already. The next one is due out mid-January. And there is information on all the T-levels on that e-bulletin. If you scroll down to the bottom, that's where the land-based information will be. And please also sign up for email updates and alerts so that you get all the best and most up-to-date information that we release to centres. And on our website, we have the dedicated T-levels page, which is constantly being updated. And you can find out, again, all the information that you need on there. The T-levels timeline is on there, which I'll show you in a moment. You can get involved in validation groups and focus groups. The Employer Industry Board information is on there. The specifications should be released next year. As you may know, we have just finished the final approval milestone validation for the agriculture, land management and production content. That content will be sent to the Institute next week for the final approval milestone. So all being well, we can release the final specifications as soon as we can next year. And there is a dedicated technical advisors page where you can see details of the technical advisors for every sector. Just to show you a couple of examples of what's on the website, those big red boxes there from the T-levels page, you can click on each of those on the page. They are all hyperlinks to various pages of information. There's a site for employers, providers and learners. The resources and support page is a particularly useful one. That's where you'll find the 12-month countdown calendar, where I've got an example of that there on the slide. That's just a snapshot of that calendar. It is a live document, so it does get updated as events and webinars, etc., are added to the calendar. So do keep checking on that. It will get updated as events are announced. There's an events and webinars page where you can register for any upcoming webinars as well. And there's an FAQs page, which again is updated regularly. Just a shout out for some support from you. As part of our development of the agriculture, land management and production qualification, we are approaching centres to ask if anyone would be available to assist with the production of our guidance standard exemplar materials for each of the occupational specialisms. This involves staff conducting sample assessments that we will provide to them, producing evidence for those assessments in the same way that a learner would produce evidence towards their assessments. So written answers, photographic or video evidence of practical activities. And what the GSEM is basically a guide for other centres to see what does a pass level of competence look like from a learner, what does a distinction level of competence look like. So it's a general guide for delivery for other providers. If you are interested, we can provide payment for a completed GSEM. It's £1,500, and we are looking to start the process as soon as possible. So if you are interested, please do get in touch with either myself or Sarah Cox, our other technical advisor, and we can arrange a Teams meeting with the development manager, Richard Burns, who can give you advice and guidance towards what's involved in the process. So please do get in touch if you think your centre may be able to help us with that. It really is vital that we get this material in place to help other centres towards their delivery. Something else you may be interested in is our associate vacancies. There are vacancies available in all sorts of roles across City and Guilds in an associate capacity. So if you are interested in taking on some additional paid work, and you also get paid to train to fulfill these roles, we have vacancies for EPAs. There are various roles within the T-levels, TQAs, for example, exam writing, moderation, EQAs. So do have a look at that page on our website. The easiest way to find it is to put associate vacancies into the search bar at the top, and that will take you to the page that I've got illustrated there on the slide. So do have a look at that if you're interested. Our next land-based T-level webinar is part 3 of this series, T-level familiarisation, part 3. And that webinar takes place on the 13th of January, Friday the 13th. I hope you're not superstitious. And that webinar will concentrate on the structure and assessment of the occupational specialisms within agriculture, land management and production. And really importantly, if you are a centre looking to deliver the T-level from September 2023, and you want advice and guidance in the approvals process, there are 2 webinars that you can join on the 12th of January and the 16th of February. Again, these will be recorded and put onto the website, but if you join the webinars, you'll be able to pose questions, etc. So you do have to go to both. I think it's not the same webinar being repeated. They are different. So do register for both of those approval and support webinars, please, if you are interested. Okay, so what I would like to ask those of you who are attending, if you wouldn't mind putting into either the chat or the Q&A function whether your centre is interested in delivering the agriculture, land management and production T-level from September 2023, and which of the occupational specialisms you may be interested in delivering. That would be very helpful for our data. So if you could provide us with a little bit of information before you leave, that would be really brilliant. And I'll have a look and see if there are any further questions. 1 second. Okay. So a few questions from Karen. Thank you, Karen. Only formal assessments are at the end of the year. Yes, the exam assessment windows, there'll be a summer series of exams towards the end of the year in year 1. And the occupational specialism assessment will be in an assessment window at year 2. So in terms of formal assessments, yes, obviously centres will be inputting their own formative assessments throughout the year, but the only formal assessments are within those exam windows, yes. The core teaching and learning resources, I can't really give you a date on when they may be available. They are in development process at the moment, and as you know, the content is yet to be finalised and approved. So it will be well, next year at some point, but I can't really give a final date for that. And thank you for the comment on the timings of the webinar. I do appreciate that comment. Thank you, Karen. And do please be aware that the webinars are recorded, and questions can always be emailed to me separately if necessary. Thank you. And I can see there are some comments in there on the occupational specialisms as well. Thank you very much, those of you who are supplying that. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Any further questions, do feel free to email either myself or Sarah, and we'll answer as many questions as we possibly can. And if there are no further questions in the Q&A pane, oh, there we are. Where do we find the calendar for planning to deliver? I will be providing a curriculum planning document on the website in January. Our 12-month countdown calendar is on the Teaching and Learning Resources tab on the resources page, but I will be providing a curriculum planning calendar in January as well. That is currently in development. Okay. I will stay on the line for the next few minutes if there are any further questions. But thank you all for joining. I appreciate your time. And that will be the end of the webinar. Thank you very much indeed. Have a lovely Christmas and a happy New Year. I will get back to any further questions that I see over the next couple of minutes, but thank you all for joining.